Vijay. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Grathitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambattvamanusandaddhami Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshinim Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi Vedai Sangha Padakramopanishadaihi Gayanti Yam Samagaha Dhyanavastita Tatkatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yoginaha Yasyantam Navidussura Suraganaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha. So, let's chant 5 verses, starting with verse number 13 of the 4th chapter. You can just follow after me. Number 13. Chaturvarnyam maya shrishtam. Chaturvarnyam maya shrishtam. Gunakarma vibhagashaha. Tasya kartaramapi mam vidhi. Tasya kartaramapi mam vidhi. Akartaramavavyayam. Namam karmani limpanti. Name karma phale spriha. Itimam yo bhijanati. Itimam yo bhijanati. Karma bhir nasabadhyate. Evam jnatva kritam karma. Evam jnatva kritam karma. Purvairapi mumukshubhihi. Purvairapi mumukshubhihi. Kuru karmaiva te tasmatvam. Kuru karmaiva tasmatvam. Purvai purvataraf kritam. Kim karma kimakarmeti. Kavayopyatra mohitaha. Kavayopyatra mohitaha. Tatte karma pravakshyami. Te karma pravakshyami. Yat jnatva mokshase shubhat. Karmano hyapi bodhavyam. Bodhavyam cha vikarmanaha. Akarmanascha bodhavyam. Gahana karmano gatihi. Gahana karmano gati. What a beautiful thing. We'll come to it in the next few classes. Not today. Anyway, very beautiful thing. So, what we were doing in the previous class, sorry for just a second. So on the verse number 13, Shri Krishna says, Chatur Varnyam Maya Shrishtam Guna Karma Vibhagashaha Tasya Kartaram Api Mam Vidhi Akartaram Avyayam. So this needs to, we need to think about this and understand this, that our life, in the picture of our life, everyone's life, there is some kind of an organized infrastructure that is provided to us. As we were discussing in the previous class, the Mandukya Upanishad, some kind of an outline is given to us. And this infrastructure is meant for us to gain individual freedom in our life. Every one of us. It's not different. Our roots are different, our aspirations are different. Somebody wants to be a scientist, somebody wants to be a leader, somebody wants to make a lot of money. All of those are side benefits and side aspirations. But the end aspiration for everyone is we want to be free. Absolutely free of any problems whatsoever. Any kind of limitation I don't want. And Swami Dayanand used to say that. He said, if you analyze people's behaviors, before you have a sense of freedom, another thing which is important, before that, even just kind of like a couple of steps before that, is that each one of us wants to be important in our lives. This is a very, very interesting thing, important thing actually, that none of us want to be insignificant in our lives. We want something that I am. You may be doing, as we will, today is a very interesting lecture, we'll talk about Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra and so on. In all of the cases, what we are really after is significance. I don't want to be an insignificant person. That's why when we have a behavior with each other as people, if you kind of criticize someone, that hurts. Why does it hurt? Because it belittles the importance of the person. Swami Dayanand used to say that. He said, this is why you find that the teenagers, they're very vulnerable, because they sometimes they leave the home and run away with their new friends and so on. And all of that happens because the parents don't realize that even everyone wants to be significant at all times, to be appreciated, to be looked up to. They may be a 10-year-old, doesn't matter. So you have to appropriate your response to a 10-year-old. You cannot say, you are such a fool. You'll never amount to anything. No. Huge problems. And Swamiji used to say that. He says, so there's a young girl who's, 13 years old, 14 years, somewhere in that range. And all she hears is criticism from her parents. And the parents think I'm trying to improve her. I'm going to try to teach her. But they do it in the wrong way because they're criticizing her. You didn't do this, and why did you choose these clothes today? And you're never punctual, and this, that, or the other. In between that, she meets a boy in her class. And this boy, for whatever reason, he's in love with her or something. And in fact, it's interesting, he also gets the same criticism from his parents. How come your shoes are never laced properly, this, that, or the other. But when they're with each other, they say, you're wonderful. You're so wonderful. Wow. Why? Because they enhance the significance of the person. And this is why the young kids run away from home, because they don't want to be branded as insignificant. They want to be significant. And of course, the ultimate objective is not on just the significance, but happiness, joy. And this is common to all of us. To provide that, there is a certain infrastructure which has been given to us to improve ourselves so that we can be totally happy. This is what we are talking about. Chaturvarnyam Mahasishtam. So this should be seen as a two-level diagram. Okay, you should see this very clearly. So one level is what is called the ashrama system, which we went over in great detail in the last class. Remember? So we had brahmachari, grihastha, then vanaprastha, then sannyasa. So we've already gone through, I won't repeat that. That's pretty much, so the ashrama system is one dimension of this infrastructure. It's a two-level infrastructure. Today we are going to do the second dimension of this infrastructure called, so here this is what is called Varna system. So one is, in fact, the one dimension which is the ashrama system was not talked about in this verse. So this verse now, and we are going to go into a lot of details today, you will see some very interesting things on the Varna dimension. So the Varna dimension means, so actually the technical meaning of the word Varna, people think of it as a caste for caste system in India and so on, and we get criticized royally for doing that. But anyway, the technical meaning of Varna is color. So the color means that there are 4 different segmentation, and Ishvara has specifically designed. And this is for a human being, by the way, not for animals. Because animals have their own, they also have some kind of a, who is the boss, who is the follower. It's very interesting, you see these birds flying in formation. And you wonder, the person in the front, how did that bird got to the front? Did they choose it? Or did he just take it on his own? My nephew, my younger brother's son, he's an ornithologist. In fact, he just finished his PhD from Cornell. He's getting married in a couple of months, and he's an ornithologist. And I didn't realize what a wonderful vocation. He's the one who was telling, do you know he spends a lot of his time in South America perched on a tree. Perched on a tree, he takes his sleeping bag. I was asking him, I said, what do you, and he watches these birds and he records their sounds. It's a science, there's a lot of research on it. Anyway, so the birds have their own Varna system. We don't know what it is. But let's just focus on something that applies to us, our Varna system. So now let's go into the Varna system. So the Varna, so this is what is called Vyavastha. The word used is Vyavastha. So Vyavastha means an infrastructure. English would be a good translation of Vyavastha would be, what is the nature of this infrastructure? So also another thing, one more thing before we go into the detail. So if you look at this 2-dimension chart, which is ashrama on one angle and varna on the other, The ashrama is primarily personal, with some secondary aspects of the society. The Varna system has a heavy dose of societal inputs. Ultimately, it is all for a personal growth. It's not for the society's growth. Society's growth is important as an element of personal growth. If you are a wonderful person and you live in a place where stones are thrown at you, as it happens in Saudi Arabia, for example, you cannot openly say Om. They say, what did you say just now? You say Om. What does that mean? That means it's Ishvara. Stones are, you're going to be jailed. So the society is also important. Fortunately, we don't have to go to Saudi Arabia, or we do, we just pray in our own home. We don't have to do it outside. So society is also important, the Varna is also important, but it is for your own personal growth that the society's improvement is also given. So with that preamble, now let's go into the details of the Varna system. So Chatur Varnyam means that I have defined, Ishvara says here, that I have decided after, this is the very nature of the creation, 4 Varnas in life, for human life. Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. These are the 4 Varnas. And this has 3 ways of looking at the Varna. One is called Guna Varna. Guna Vibhaga means by quality. So this is Guna Vibhaga. That means that you, from a standpoint of your qualities, you are Brahmana, Kshatriya, etc. Number 1. The second one is Karma. So karma means what have you decided to do in your life as a profession. So this is what is called karma. So karma here means your decision to take on a role in your life. This is the second one. So one is the Guna Vibhaga, the second one is Karma Vibhaga, and then we also should add a third one which is not specifically mentioned here for a reason, is Jati Varna, by birth. Janma Varna, Jati Varna, which is there. So when you are born in the Brahmana family, then very interestingly, this is also relates to our previous class also. So here, this is called the state, as we were saying, sthana, and so on, but independently also. It's interesting that when this race riot happened recently in Virginia, and President Obama made a statement, he is making a statement exactly like on this Varna system. So what he said was, that when a child is born, no one thinks of them as superior or inferior. That thinking comes later. So you will look at a couple of 1-year-olds playing with each other. One is white and the other one is completely dark, and so on and so forth. That differentiation doesn't occur in the children. They just play with each other. They pass candies to each other and so on. Then later on, it happens, then the parents say, hey, don't play with minority people. You're supposed to be over here. And slowly, the identification called abhimana becomes. So similarly here, what I'm saying is, no one is born a Brahmana or a Shudra But what happens is their parents say, hey, do you know? Even if a person is, as soon as he's old enough to understand this, do you know you are a Brahmana? You know this is the most superior caste there is? So the fellow says, I don't know what you're talking about. Just give me some food, that's all I need. So the parent says, no, you got to think about this. And don't play with the other people and so on and so forth. I remember, maybe the same thing happened to us when we were growing up. So we used to have a huge house. My father was a mining engineer, and fortunately he had a very palatial house with lots of servants and helpers and so on and so forth. And the helpers and servants all had kids, and they were all the same age, and we used to all play together. And it was no distinction or anything. But then slowly the parents tell, well, you know, they cannot come inside the living room. So you say, well, I don't know why not, they can come to the living room. He says, no, that's not that, they have to stay outside. And so pretty soon this superiority and inferiority comes up. So to close off this point, jati, I'll explain it in more detail. The jati means it is imposed on them by other people, parents and so on, that you are a Brahmana. There's nothing in the body which says you are a Brahmana. It is an imposition of a mind on top of that says you are a Brahmana. Anyway, so that's the jati. So now we go back to the three different ways that the varna is used. What are those? Gunataha, karmataha, and jatitaha. Taha means due to. So as because of karma, guna, karma, and jati. So let's look at the implication for all of them. Okay. So the first one is the guna, as a guna. So basis of the guna, which is really the basis of the whole thing, there are three basic gunas, qualities that define us, which is sattva guna, rajo guna, and tamo guna. You know all of that, we've already talked about it, but just in terms of the context of this, let's look at it. So all of us are a mixture of that. And at any one time in our day, one or the other takes over. So like for example, if you don't have tamoguna at night time, you won't be able to go to sleep. And you can counteract it by having, supposing at 10 o'clock at night, and you may be different than me, I cannot drink coffee or tea after 3 in the afternoon. Because if I drink even at 4 o'clock, tea maybe I can have, but if I have coffee at 4 o'clock, I can't go to sleep at night. 1:30, 2 o'clock will come. So, but the natural thing on the tamoguna is when darkness comes, tamoguna takes over and makes you go to sleep. More on that later on. In the morning, the sattva guna is predominant. Your mind is very fresh. In the beginning of a person's childhood, sattva guna is predominant. Children, they are relatively pure. They learn. Their ability to absorb knowledge is amazing. Towards the latter part of the day, or towards the latter part of one's life, when you grow up, rajoguna takes over. And the essence of rajoguna, so just to finish off sattva guna is learning. It is calmness. it is perseverance. So whenever we learn something, it is with a calm mind. Otherwise, you're moving around in your head and so on. Your thoughts are too chanchalam. You cannot learn anything. So it always means. So this is sattva guna, learning, thinking of kindness is sattva guna. And this is the highest guna that everybody must inculcate. We have the ability, and so through food and our conduct and so on, we have to go from rajoguna and tamoguna to sattva guna. Most important. Because the sattva guna alone allows me to reflect on my own reality as a free person. Anyway, so that's the gunataha. Then we saw the rajoguna. The primary way of looking at rajoguna is desire, activity. Is rajoguna. More of that as we come in. I'll just keep it brief. Tamoguna is inactivity, laziness, non-understanding. All of these in the night time, where you cannot, your mind it's too tired. You say, I can't. Somebody is trying to give you some sophisticated arguments, and he says, you know what? Tomorrow. Tonight I just want to sleep on it. So tamoguna is, and then during the day also, another thing very interestingly, when you overeat, tamoguna sets in. This is why I recommend that you come to the class. Do not have a heavy breakfast before you come here. You know, there are lots of dosas and idlis and this, that, or the other, because this is a natural thing. Your body is so busy in all the oxygen. This is a fact, medical fact. All the oxygen and your nutrients are busy in trying to cope up with this, all the food that you have taken in. And your mind is, your brain is devoid of all of that. Anyway, so those are all the things. So we have three gunas: sattva guna, rajoguna, and tamoguna. Now we come to the four varnas. Okay? In the four varnas, Brahmana, from a guna standpoint, is one where the sattva guna is predominant. We're not talking about jati. We're not talking about born as a Brahmana. We're talking about a person. And the person could be, hopefully has some spiritual, but doesn't need to. It could be just a scientist who's very interested in learning. It was interesting. I was at a wedding about a month back in Carmel, and it was a Western family that we know. And so we were sitting there in a dinner table. And so there were two youngsters who were sitting on the table. One was about 12 or so, and the other one was about 14, his older brother. So it was interesting, I was observing them. So this 12-year-old boy was very talkative and very friendly. And the way he addressed himself and so on and so forth, he was very outgoing. And you ask him a question and he would respond and so on. His older brother was quiet, didn't say much. Didn't make a lot of eye contact. He was just eating his food and so on and so forth. So the younger guy was telling us, he says, you know, this brother of mine, he's a nerd. He's a nerd. He himself was telling, this other guy he didn't say, what are you talking about? He also just quietly said, okay, fine, I'm a nerd, so what can. But he says he's a very bright nerd. And I tell you, I was an engineer as I was growing up. So the average engineer is a nerd. And very interesting, they are more interested in problem solving. They want to talk to people and so on and so forth. That comes later on. But they are very sharp. They may not be able to be socially very, very wise. So their thinking is just purely, they don't have any desire to talk to people or anything. They just want to solve a problem. Brahmana, Sattva Guna Pradhana. Then you have Kshatriya. And Kshatriya is the one where, so the one other thing we can say, that in the case of a Brahmana, where Sattva Guna is Pradhana and the other ones are way back, it becomes spiritual seeking. If the Sattva Guna Pradhana is there, but it is backed by a lot of Rajoguna, then it is not spiritual seeking, it is seeking in the empirical world as a scientist. Because what we have is that the scientist also wants to know the truth, but he also wants to make a name for himself. In spiritual, you don't want any name for yourself. You just want to understand the truth about yourself. So there are some differences. We don't have time to go into all of that. Then comes Kshatriya. In Kshatriya, the Rajoguna is Pradhana. Rajoguna is Pradhana. And the Rajoguna means that I want to accomplish things. I want to be a leader. And so that's number one. Now, the two others can be in reverse. In other words, Rajoguna is number one, followed by either Sattvaguna or Tamoguna. So it'd be RST or RTS. Swami Paramarthananda has given all this. He uses these acronyms, RTS, RST, and so on. Let's not go into that level. Just this, that the Rajoguna can be backed by either Sattva Guna or Tamoguna. If it is backed by Sattva Guna, then the desire and the activities of the Kshatriya is dharmic. Means that it is inconsistent with the laws. And so you find, for example, a lot of the military people are like that, are very much like that. I remember when I was growing up and we had 4 or 5 friends, I may have told you this. So when we were in high school, then the talk came to, so what do you want to do? Where do you want to do? And so on. And believe it or not, out of the 5 people that we had, 3 of them really wanted to go to the army. And 2 of us, we thought, this is stupidity. Why do we want to go to the army? But they were just in love with the way the army works, how they are recruited. And I, of course, was too much of a weakling. I was like 90 pounds, could hardly even stand straight. And so I knew that the army was not going to accept me, and I didn't even have any desire to go to the army. So that's why I went into some studies and so on and so forth, and became an engineer. But I appreciated, and these guys have done well. One of my friends, one of these 3 people, he lost his leg. He was a major in the Indian Army at the Pakistani war, and he lost one of his legs, either right or leg or left, and then rose up very high. He has a prosthetic leg, and he rose up very high in the army commanders and so on. So anyway, going back to the Kshatriya, so the Kshatriya can have either a dharmic life or adharma. because so you find a lot of the people who are doing well and they want to make a lot of money and so on. And no, leave aside the money. I'm talking about leadership. Yeah, money comes in Vaishya. But if you look at the Kshatriya, and so the leaders, the administration, the political people, they are also they have a desire to lead. They can be either corrupt or be straight. So it depends on who the second one is and what the third one is. Anyway, so that's number two. Then the third one, she is one. Also another thing, we're trying to pack a lot of information in a short time because this is just a summary. We'll expand on it some other time. So the Sattva Guna Pradhana, the Brahmana, is mostly selfless. We're talking about Gunataha. We're not talking about the actual Brahmana. Please remember that. This is Gunataha. From a standpoint of Guna, is mostly selfless. Selfless means that you are thinking of yourself, but you're thinking about the truth about things. And you need to convey that to the others as well. And you're anxious to make sure that others also have the same appreciation about the truth as you do. So there's a certain selfishness to it, selflessness to it. The case of Kshatriya is a mixture. Some of it is personal and some of them is societal. Then comes the next one, which is Vaishya. The Vaishya is where the personal development, the personal money development is the primary objective. And here, so this is the thing. So if you look at one gradation, which is the degree of selfless and selfishness, highest selflessness in the Brahmana, less selflessness in the Kshatriya, even less in the Vaishya. Because the Vaishya's thing is, so it's not as though it is not there. If the Vaishya is seconded by Sattva, Vaishya means seconded by Sattva, then what it means is that the money making is partially personal but partially also for the country and the society. If it is backed by tamas, it is almost purely just personal. I want to make money, I don't care if anybody else. In fact, they will use wrong methods to make money. So this is the Vaishya. Then comes Shudra. The Shudra is one where Tamoguna is Pradhana. Tamoguna is Pradhana. Very little learning, ability to learn. They are not interested. They are interested in just having fun. And it's interesting, it doesn't mean, by the way, elsewhere, excuse me, elsewhere it is said, in the, I was reading it in the Panchadashi, Swami Vidyaranya's commentary on this. So, the second one, which is Rajoguna, is one which is capable of giving you karma phala, which is either positive or negative. Because desire, which is the very essence of Rajoguna, means activity, that is karma. You got to do something. You can't just sit there. You have to, let's do something. But how you do it and with what with what dharma and adharma depends on whether it is papa or papa karma or punya karma. In the case of tamoguna, generally speaking, there is no papa karma or punya karma. There is no phalam whatsoever. In fact, the tamoguna, in that sense, and we'll go back to Shudra, is a waste of one's life. It is just not doing anything whatsoever. And so, in the case of the animal kingdom, the tamoguna is very high. So also in the animals, there is no punya and papa. You don't do anything wrong. And you don't do anything right. So you just while away your time and wait for this life to be over so other gunas can come into it. Similarly, very interestingly it is said that supposing there is a person who is acting very crazily, and so he's put into, and so he damages the society, he beats people up, whatever it is, and so on. So finally they said, you know what, we cannot cope up with that. So they drug him for staying in a mental hospital. If you saw that very famous movie called One Who Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, this is all about that, where Jack Nicholson is the person. I think he's one of the patients there. Anyway, what you find in the mental hospital is they have been deliberately drugged, so they just sit there and don't do anything. So the Shudra is not like that, but it is in a way like that. Means that people are not interested in doing anything. There are people. It's not as though anything is bad or good. So in those Shudras also, now this is tamoguna pradhana, and now we can see, we will see that later on, but I'm almost starting from the back end. Gunataha, a Shudra can be a Brahmana. How? How is that possible? Because you follow your life in a dharmic way, serving others. And my own Chintamani, who was from Odisha, and he brought, he was our cook. And what a wonderful person he was. He could hardly even sign his name. He had never read more than, he could forget about his newspapers, so he could not read. There's no knowledge whatsoever. But how devoted he was to me. I remember that so well. I was very sick when I was growing up. I had asthma, and my parents were sick of me. They're saying, where did this guy come from? Chintamani was always at my bedside. Beta, it's okay. Don't worry about it. And I don't know whether he was Shudra or whatever, but unread, unschooled. You talk to him about anything about those days, Gandhiji and so on, he had no idea. But I was like 6 or 7 when India became independent. And I remember those days, I was just a child. And Chintamani had no idea what was happening and so who are the British and so on and so forth. Absolutely nothing. But his character was so helpful, just followed it, everything. So this is what is called Shudra Brahmana. We'll go into that in more detail. So now we say from a guna standpoint, there are 4 gradations. Guna Brahmanaha, Guna Kshatriyaha, Guna Vaishyaha, Guna Shudraha. Okay? Now let's go into Karma Vibhaga. Karma Vibhaga means by profession, what you choose to do. And ultimately then we will put it all together. So now, a Karma Brahmana is one who follows an intellectual path, either spiritual or non-spiritual. Education, research, teaching, analysis, inquiry. This is what they do, professors. Okay? And again, the secondary aspect of their personality so there could be a Karma Brahmanaha, I'm just giving you a preview of this. There can be a Karma Brahmanaha and Gunaha Kshatriya. How? Means that they are primarily intellectual, but they want to show that they are a leader in their field. So they have a lot of Rajoguna supporting their Brahmana, Karma Brahmana. Anyway, so we'll see all the differences in between all of them. So let's go through this. So Karma Brahmana are intellectuals, education. So Karma Kshatriyaha, administration, leadership, defense, law and order, police, protection, is Karma Kshatriya. Again, how Gunataha they are there, it's a different thing altogether. We'll go into that, but Karma Kshatriya. Karma Vaishyaha, production of wealth, business, economic maintenance of society, those kinds of things. They're interested in making sure that the country and themselves and others are doing well. So, Karma Vaishyaha. And Karma Shudraha is helping everybody else. They are incapable of leading. They don't have the education or the desire for that matter. They don't have the saying, tomorrow I'm going to get up and do this. No. But they can be followers of any one of the other three. Generally, I would say of Kshatriya and Vaishya, because the Karma Brahmana doesn't need a lot of help. He's a professor who's sitting there. He doesn't need a lot of things and so on. I was telling you this, that when I was working for IBM, so I was recruited or I got a job in Menlo Park. Most of IBM's laboratories were in San Jose, and I was working on the disk drive. It was back in 60s. I'm taking you back in more than 50 years. But then I got a job in Menlo Park, and at that time, Gene Amdahl was made a huge, he was a person who was asked to do a fast computer for IBM. And ultimately his project didn't succeed, but he formed his own company, Amdahl Computer, and he left. But for about few months, my office was very close to where I used to walk past him and go to the men's room, for example. We would be going back and forth. So I was on the same floor as Gene Amdahl, who was a big shot at that time. And my enduring memory of him is he would be sitting there and his desk is spotlessly clean. We go to our desk, there are all kinds of papers, this, that, or the other. I think the desk computer was not there at that time. Yeah, in the 60s there was no computer. You had to go to a big computer. So there was no computer on the desk, but we had lots of shuffled paper. But he was spotlessly clean. And he would come in the morning with a bag, and he'd take out a yellow piece of paper with a pencil and sit there, and he would have a cup of coffee, and he would be sitting there like this. I used to wonder, what's he doing? I mean, you're supposed to be doing something, you know? If your boss finds out you're just sitting there, he says, hey, you're fired. You're not doing anything. But Jean Amdahl. And occasionally he will write down some notes. And then Brahmana. He was really interested in some fine thinking. And other than getting a cup of coffee, he didn't need anybody else to help him. So no Shudra, no nothing. So the Shudra only helps the Kshatriya and the Vaishya. Anyways, karmataha, you can be a Shudra. And I tell you, this is what our leaders don't understand about Mexico and so on. The whole society is really held together by these unskilled workers. Just amazing. I can give you another example. Our lady at our own home, she is Christina Aguilar. She works for my wife's brother. And then she comes to our house for doing cleaning. What a soul of a person. So pure. Never forgets a birthday. And we have to pay her back. She gives such large gifts to the kids. Immaculately honest. You can leave money on it and so on. Nothing ever happens. Completely unskilled, unschooled. And doesn't know any English also. Hardly we can communicate with her. But what a beautiful person she is. Just amazing. We treat her as part of the family. She's been with us for like 25, 30 years. And so the Shudra doesn't mean that they're not wonderful. It's just that they are not leaders, they haven't been trained for it, they don't have the ability, and so on and so forth. So now, there is an important rule that we must follow. Guna and karma don't have to be the same. So, for example, I can be karmataha a brahmana. I can be a karma brahmana. So, for example, if I am teaching Vedas, Vedanta, then from a karma standpoint, I'm a brahmana. But suppose I start charging for the classes. And I raise the fee. And I am very particular about collecting. Supposing I give you some book and you have not given me some fee for it, I'll remind you. I say, hey, what happened? Supposing my mind and thinking is that way, then what happens is, gunataha, I am Vaishya. Karmataha, I am a Brahmana. But from a guna standpoint, I am a Vaishya. Or, supposing I want to make a big name for myself. You know, you're just about 40 people sitting in the class. I want to have 400 people. And I start advertising and I start giving lectures and somehow this would be. Then means gunataha, I become a kshatriya. I become a desire of making money for myself. And I want to be a leader. And it's interesting. And it's not, nothing is good or bad, of course, but it does change things a little bit. So for example, we are grateful actually to both Swami Chinmayananji and Swami Dayanandji that in addition to be Brahmana as a profession and a guna, they had some rajas in them. Because do you know, there are a lot of the teachers of Vedanta and so on, they criticize them. They say, why do you have to go and teach, especially outside of India? There's no necessity. Our Shastra says that anybody outside of India is to be left alone. They've got their own problems. Don't deal with them. Just stay within India. But and not only that, a lot of the teaching in there is done only for Brahmanas. Even if you are a Kshatriya, this is very interestingly that happened. So there was we had a classmate of ours, James, I forget his last name. He was the cook, our 2.5-year course. And he had taken a course with Swamiji before, wonderful person. He was telling me one day, we were traveling in a car, he says, you know, after I finished my course, I wanted to go to Sringeri and meet the Shankaracharya and so on. So first of all, meeting the Shankaracharya, he was a Western person, obviously, was very difficult. They'll say, why do you want to, why are you doing it? I'm not sure we have this is somehow or the other. He took some letters from Swami Dayanandji, and so he was fully prepared. So he went there. So I think the junior Shankaracharya of Sringeri, he was not a full one. He talked to him. And so he said, at the end, he was saying, okay, then what? So he says, you know, what have you studied? He says, I have studied this. Then he says, have you studied Brihadaranyaka yet or Chandogya? He said, no, we didn't get enough time. And he had a bookshelf of of Upanishads that he could have given him. Instead, he gave him Panchadashi. And that's because he was obviously not a Brahmana. If he's a Westerner, all Westerners are non-Brahmanas right away. So he says, I was interested. And he says it's a very good book, but not Upanishads. So the Upanishads were only taught to Brahmanas. So what I'm saying is that in Swami Chinmayananda and Swami Dayanand's case, they had some rajas in them that they said, you know, this need to be taught. If people don't understand it, that's okay. But we need to really do something about it. So Gunataha, they were somewhat Kshatriyas rather. Because if you are a pure Gunataha Brahmana, you won't even go outside. Like in the case of Ramana Maharshi. He was not interested in teaching. He would just give a satsang for a while during the day. Some questions would be asked and that was it. No classes or anything like that. So all we're saying is that guna and karma don't have to be the same. They can be different. Then we come to the last one, which is jatitaha. Jatitaha. The by birth. Varna by birth. So there is no mention of jatitaha varna in the Shastra. No one. There is a mention of varna in all of the Shastra, but not jatitaha varna. So the infrastructure which is used for the furtherance of the personal gain, freedom, which I talked about earlier, is there in all of the Shastras. So for example, if you look at Purusha Suktam, He says, Brahmanaha mukhamasit. Brahmana is the head of, so for example, supposing you have a body, not supposing you have a body. In the body, you have different parts doing different things. Do you have a head to think, supposedly to think? Then you have arms, you have legs, you have a stomach, you have all kind of actions. And all parts are needed for a complete person. So in a society also, all parts are needed. You need thinkers, you need leaders, you need people who are economically inclined, you need people who are supporting, who are willing to be led. So, Brahmanaha mukhamasi bahu rajanyah kritaha uru tadasya yad vaishyah padbhyam shudro ajayata. So in the Purusha Sukta, it talks about all of them. But it doesn't say the Shudra Jatitaha born. No. Again, because the Shudratvam is based on their ability, not their. No one is born as a Shudra, but this is how the society has made it out to be. Anyway, from a Jati standpoint, they say that there are two possibilities. Okay? Supposing a Jati Brahmana, a person is born from a Brahmana family, then from a standpoint of what he or she wants to be, you can be a Karma Kshatriya. But supposing he's a corrupt, then become Guna Vaishya. So how a person who is born, what does he want to do? Totally depends on the person. But I think we have really created a problem in our where our society already has pigeonholed them. And a lot of attempts are made to eliminate that, but it's not going to be easy. This is a very serious thing which will take a long time. Recently I was reading about this woman who wanted to be a doctor, I think, if I'm mistaken. And what problem she had. She was born in Haryana and in a so-called untouchable, and she was asked to sit on the back of the class, and not all the material was given to her, and that made her even more determined. And she has come out to be a blazing successful doctor. And but so there are societal problems. No one is denying that. But it is not, it's a misinterpretation of the Shastra. The Shastra says, yes, we need all four kinds of people. But to brand someone just because they are born, as Obama was saying, no one is born with a dislike of the blacks or the whites or anything like that. It all comes later on. You look at the children playing with each other, they have no idea. They're just two children with each other. It's all the biases given by parents and societies and so on and so forth, for whatever reason. And I think one of the issues that comes up is there is some truth to the fact of the probability. So it's very possible. So going back to teaching of Vedanta to the Brahmanas, if your DNA is that you are born in a family that loves learning, chances are you will have a better chance of learning. We agree with that. We agree with that. So the probability of learning is one thing, but to be labeled as something where you cannot get out of it is wrong. It's completely wrong. So then, in a few more minutes, let me just summarize this. This is all I wanted to just give you a general idea. So, to summarize, Shruti says, Shastra says, in terms of jati, there cannot be gradations. Cannot be, there's no, everyone is born equal. But here is where the society makes a difference. Karma-wise, all are important. All are important. Teachers are important. Administrators are important. Economic well-being is important. Support of all the three is important, as I mentioned before. Guna-wise, so there is no gradation jatitaha, no gradation karmataha, gunataha there is a gradation. There should be a gradation. So let's understand that. That's the final point, and then I will answer any questions that you have. Guna Brahmanaha is superior to Guna Kshatriyaha, who is superior to Guna Vaishyaha, who is superior to Guna Shudraha. How? Guna Brahmana is where Sattva Guna Pradhana. This is very essential for contemplation, for examination of your own nature. The presence of Ishvara, very important. So, in terms of the closeness to the truth, the Guna Brahmana is definitely superior. And we must all strive to become Guna Brahmana. Gunas can change. You're not just born with, yes, you have certain baggage that you're born with. So it is very unlikely. So I agree. So for example, supposing there is a Guna Shudraha, it is unlikely that I can ask the domestic help to start understanding Satyam and Mithya and Saguna Brahma. It's possible, but it will take a long, so you're a little bit farther off. So more than that, forget about that. So a Guna Shudraha is least desirable. You know why? Because a Guna Shudraha, Gunata means that it may be a good people. That's why Gunataha. But their focus is on just the enjoyment of life, protection, just the artha kama, and hopefully some dharma. But moksha is difficult. They have not yet, they're farther away from it. Then Guna Vaishyaha have to give up their selfishness and begin to serve a larger good. Only then they will become Guna Kshatriya. So, to summarize, there is a gradation of Guna Varna. There is a gradation. The Shruti also says it, yes. Karmataha no, Jatitaha no, but Gunataha, it is important for us to become Sattva Guna Pradhana. Because to become thinking is important for self-thinking, contemplation. And so you cross over from the empirical to the spiritual. And to get to the empirical, you need to lessen your selfishness. Like, for example, in the case of Kshatriya, you need to lessen your selfishness and begin to look at the larger thing. This is what we were saying the earlier also, I think in the Tuesday night class, that one of our progress in life would be if you're able to, and this happens in the fourth. So you see now the ashrama and the varna system intersect with each other. So it is not possible for us to become selfless unless we have fulfilled our own family's needs, which is appropriate, very appropriate. But if you have fulfilled your family's needs, then the next step is to become more selfless. And there, one of the tests that you can provide is, what you are doing in your life, is it just to maximize your own personal gain, or are you a contributor to the society? Less sankalpa and more prarabdha. And so there is a gradation. The Shruti says definitely there is a gradation from a guna standpoint, which is from guna shudra to guna vaishya, all within the same person, to guna kshatriya to guna brahmana. And then you have a good chance of coming closer to the reality about yourself. So this is kind of a structure of the two-level structure that is well explained in the Gita, but summarized very well in this very important verse, Chatur Varnyam Maya Shrishtam. So Maya Shrishtam means that this two-level structure doesn't come about by itself. There is some order, some structure to it which has been designed by Ishvara. And we need to recognize it. Otherwise it looks like very random. Everybody on their own. You don't have to follow anything. Who says this? Hey, this is where the Shraddha comes in. And then when you follow it, you feel, wow, it is like it's working. It is working. And the best thing is that you do the best for yourself and as well as to the society, all at the same time. So this is Chatur Varnyam Maya Shrishtam Gunakarma Vibhagashaha. And then the second line of that we will start with the next class. Tasya kartaram api mam vidhi akartaram avyayam. What's the meaning of that? But the main portion of that is the Chatur Varnyam. So I'll end with that and still leave some question, time for questions. Om asato ma satkamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityor ma amritam gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
First of all, thank you very much for explaining the one of I really like it. I think I learned a lot. But my question is about implementation.
Question is about, can you be a little louder? Sorry, your question is about?
Implementation.
Implementation, okay.
So, Krishna is defined before Varna.
Correct.
But has he defined anywhere how to implement? Because that's where all the problem is, how to implement.
So the whole Gita is a textbook on implementation. The whole Gita. So you know your thinking, your understanding that there is an order, looking at Ishvara, relationship with people. It's just, the whole thing is nothing but implementation. So, and then also how to improve your own thinking, how to become what is called, so it's interesting, each one of us is born with two clear segments of thinking, what is called Asuri Sampat and Daivi Sampat. Asuri Sampat is one where become very selfish, corrupt, non-tolerance towards things. This is the Asuri Sampat. And then the Daivi Sampat is where we are okay with becoming more, accepting of others and accepting of myself. That's just as important. So that's the Daivi Sampat. So in terms of implementation, it's very clear that what we need to do is to diminish our Asuri Sampat and increase our Daivi Sampat. And what we were discussing in the last class, for example, Amanitvam, the value of values in the 13th chapters, all of that is implementation. So the whole Gita is nothing but an implementation. But here, what is given is a structure for the implementation that we should understand. Yeah.
And follow it up by asking you, you have read the whole Gita. So if you go to India and suppose you are in charge of all, let's say, implemented, how would you do it? Because I've thought about it, and Jati is easiest and the most practical way to implement it, that's for society. How will you implement it?
How you implement what? Sorry.
Actually, how will you implement Varna in India based on Guna only?
Is Ishvara's doing. You and I cannot do it. All you have to do is whatever you and I can do in our own way, and people are doing it, where anytime you see that it is not being done properly, you do the best you can. If there is a temple who refuses women or Shudras to enter, you need to question them. Say, what can I do? So whatever you can do. But this is a huge thing. Let Ishvara take care of it. You're not in charge of all of India. And so at every stage, other people have to do. The government has to do it, Modi has to do it, you and I have to do it to a certain extent. So, and then at a certain point, it will take time. So it's not as though it is up to us, but we should recognize where the problems are and try to correct them as best as we can. That's it. Shilpa, you had a question?
Similar to that, actually, I was asking about this system that you just explained and Karma Yoga, because even during that period of time, the gurus that were fighting against Pandavas, they were Gunata and Kuramata Brahmins, but they still were Kshatriyas. So similarly, kind of like that, what happens in our own lives. I don't know, it's kind of, I'm kind of thinking about it.
Yeah, I think we have a lot to sort out. It's, not something you do in one or two classes, but I think the key thing is that I would just leave with this, that to recognize some structure and pattern of our life amidst the rather random nature of things that we are engulfed with is an important element. And to even recognize the structure and the infrastructure and so on and so forth, it's not going to be easy, because our mind, you see, as this gentleman was saying, you see the India in such chaos. So you begin to see maybe this is not right. But it is a personal decision on each one of our parts. So to see the patterns, and then you begin to see that it is true, and why it is true, and how this can be improved upon, and especially for your own personal gain. If you are able to do it for the society, wonderful. But the most important thing is your own personal gain. is what progress is all about. Rani?
So, this is sort of a three-dimensional matrix
Mhm.
in a way, right? There is the tendencies, which is tamas, rajas, or sattva. And there is the guna, kind of like Brahman, what your thinking is in a way, right? How you think. And then there is the actions, how you take the actions, which are also Brahman, Kshatriya. So one needs to examine, how do I think, how do I act, what my tendencies, and try to see.
So no, I think you are expressing. So what you're expressing is perhaps a restatement of this. What I would say is that the most fundamental element of the source of this whole of this variety of situations and actions and so on are the three gunas: sattva guna, rajoguna, and tamoguna. That's the fundamental part. This is what we have to see. So all of those others have to dovetail to that. What causes a brahmana to be a brahmana, what causes an administrator, is gunas. So that's the very fundamental. Then the overlay is the actual structure and implementation in our life, and that has three possibilities. So I'm just restating it. So there's no other way to look at it. So one of them is guna, one is how you implement it in your life, which is karma, and the third one, which is not that important, which is jati, except from the standpoint that it is being misused and therefore it's been obfuscating the other two, and if you can fight it, as I was replying, then fine. But really those two, that's why Chatur Varnyam, he says 4 varnas, that is the most important one, other than the ashrama itself. So now we have a structure of our life where ashramas are important, depending upon, because you cannot just have a person who is a brahmachari, who's just a 18-year-old kid, to do everything. Your job is to understand what the structure is. Then when you are a householder, for you to become selfish is appropriate. You cannot start giving your paychecks to everybody, because you have to protect your family. But the trend in your life, personal trend, has to be to go from selfishness to selflessness. Then the other one is the varna, where you have to look at where are you, what characterizes you. We didn't finish this, but one of the interesting things is that, for example, if you, in the old days, you basically adopted the profession of your own family. If your father was a goldsmith, then you also became a goldsmith. So there are advantages and disadvantages of both. The advantage is that you get complete protection. You don't have to get A's in the college or anything like this. And you're training with a lot of patience and so on. The disadvantage is that you cannot be anything you want to. You only are chosen. Now, if on the other hand, you don't follow your father's or mother's profession, then there are advantages and disadvantages. The advantage is you can do anything you want to. The disadvantage is you don't get that personal touch. So there are choices in each one of your career paths and so on. But to recognize the pattern and to see the structure, it's very useful in one thing. That's all. Yes, Chandra.
Just talking about implementation, I think instead of looking at Jati Varna, maybe Karma Varna, maybe economic status, maybe a better way.
This is what is being done. Yeah, so that's what it is. This is where the advantages are being given to people on the big economic funding and so on. Certain amount of percentage of college admissions are reserved for the scheduled class and so on. So the government is trying to, but I think from a standpoint of the outlook towards and so on, I think that as the economic conditions improve, it'll become less, no doubt about it. The main point is that this is not condoned by the Shastra. The only thing condoned by the Shastra is gunataha varna, not jatitaha.
On that, the main contention of people who kind of go after this thing is Manusmriti. Where does that, does he talk about jati at all? Or?
I am not familiar with it. I'll have to look into that to see. But I think that
misinterpretation or
very possible. But I can tell you from my sampradaya of teachers and understanding of the Upanishads and so on. You see, now you're right. If you look at Purusha Suktam says Shudras are the legs of the body. Okay, so it can be misinterpreted and say that is the least important one. Okay, not true, because if you don't have a legs of the body, how are you going to stand? You can't do anything, number one. Secondly, even if you were to say that it is the least important part, which is not true, but suppose you do that, it doesn't say jatitaha. Never says jatitaha. It says in 4 types of people are there in any society. It doesn't matter whether it's in India or in the US, it's the same gradation. You have people who are very interested in learning, you have people who want to lead, you have people who want to make money, and fourth is the one who are not capable but they are supporting the other 3. Very common. Yeah. So we will see you next Saturday. Okay. Oh.